Welcome back to Family Secrets Unveiled, where we pull back the curtain on family mysteries, the horrifying stories hiding behind a facade of peace. Some secrets, once exposed, won't just change your life forever, they might destroy who you are. Today, we're diving deep into a story like that, a story that has haunted me from the very first moments, a story of love, betrayal, and a ghost, of a man who is still alive. This story belongs to Sarah, a 38-year-old woman living in a quiet, peaceful town in rural New England. Her life was probably the dream of many, a cozy wooden house with a white picket fence, a small rose garden, and a wonderful husband, James. James was an architect, tall, elegant, with a warm smile that always made Sarah feel safe. Their love wasn't the fiery, cinematic romance, but a deep, quiet bond, like a river flowing through the years. Their 10 years of marriage were a perfect picture of trust, understanding, and lazy Sunday mornings with coffee and croissants. But that perfect life shattered on a rainy Friday night. While James was away on a business trip, Sarah was lying on their familiar sofa, watching an old movie. The rain outside poured down, the drops hitting the window panes with a somber rhythm. Suddenly, a dark figure flitted past the window of James's study. Sarah's heart seized. She knew James wasn't home. She tried to calm herself, telling herself it was just an illusion, maybe a branch blown by the wind. But then, the light from James's desk lamp flickered on. Sarah held her breath. Someone was inside the house. She grabbed her phone, her hand trembling as she prepared to call the police. Then she saw it. She saw a reflection on the window pane, a familiar, chilling figure. It was James. It wasn't a blurry phantom, but a clear figure, wearing the old sweater he often wore at home, his hair disheveled after a long day's work. He moved slowly towards the desk, his fingers tracing the spines of the books, then stopping at a photo of their wedding. Sarah felt the blood in her veins turn to ice. She wanted to scream, to run, but her feet were frozen to the floor. The figure did nothing, just stood there, motionless. Then, suddenly, it turned and looked straight at her through the window pane. That look wasn't James's look. It was empty, soulless, like a bottomless void. And then, the figure vanished. The light went out. Everything was plunged back into darkness. Sarah panicked, rushing into the room, turning on every light in the house. Nothing was there. Everything was exactly as she had left it. The desk lamp was off, the book was still on the shelf, the wedding photo was there, gleaming under the ceiling light. She called James, her voice trembling as she recounted what she had just seen. James chuckled softly over the phone, a worried laugh he tried to hide. He reassured her, telling her she was just overworked, that she was imagining things. He said, "I'm very far away, Sarah. I'll be home soon." His voice was familiar, but there was something different about it. His excessive calm, his lack of surprise at the story, all made Sarah uneasy. Throughout the days James was away, the ghost appeared more and more frequently. This time, it wasn't just a fleeting image. One evening, as she was cooking, the figure appeared right behind her, reflected on the stainless steel refrigerator door. It was James, but his eyes were empty. Another time, she saw him standing at the end of the hallway, simply standing there, staring at her. She tried to talk to it, but there was no response. The figure just stood still, silent, carrying a heavy, ominous feeling. Day by day, Sarah felt she was being watched, trapped in her own home. She began to doubt. Was she losing her mind? Or was there a horrifying truth hidden that she couldn't grasp? The strange thing was, every time the figure appeared, James was always very far away. She checked his itinerary, the calls he had made. Everything matched. He couldn't have been home. So, what was that figure? A ghost? An illusion? Or a warning? This contradiction gnawed at her sanity, little by little. It sowed a seed of doubt in her, not just about her own sanity, but also about the man she had lived with for 10 years. She began looking for signs, the scattered pieces of a mystery. She went through his drawers, looked at James's phone contacts, checked old emails. Nothing out of the ordinary. Everything was perfect, almost suspiciously so. It wasn't until one morning when James came home. He walked through the door and hugged her tightly. His warmth, his familiar scent, all made her believe that what she had seen was just a nightmare. But when he let go, she saw it. A round bruise on his wrist, as if he had been shackled. "I fell while on the job site," James said, his voice a little unnatural. "Don't worry, it's just a small bruise." But Sarah had seen. That bruise was not from a fall. It was too perfect, too sharp. A cold feeling ran down her spine. And while James was in the shower, she went into his study. The desk lamp was off, but she saw something glittering at the bottom of the wastebasket. It was a shirt cufflink, a shiny metal one. James never wore shirts with cufflinks like that. Her heart pounded. Did she even know the man she had married? She looked at the wedding photo on the desk. James's smile in that photo was still warm, but to her, it had become something full of mystery. What was behind that smile? She didn't know, but she felt one thing for sure. She had been deceived. And that ghost of James, was not a phantom. It was a warning. The cufflink and the bruise on James's wrist opened a door Sarah never imagined. Doubt had burrowed deep into her mind, turning her home from a sanctuary into a prison of fear and confusion. She began to observe James quietly, like a detective. She noted his habits, his phone calls, the clumsy lies she had overlooked before. The changes didn't happen overnight, but were subtle, minute details that only those who lived together for a long time could notice. James no longer liked black coffee in the morning. He had switched to lattes. He no longer read books on architectural history, but instead read detective novels. He often went out at night, claiming to be buying things. But when Sarah asked what he had bought, he would just evade the question. The ghost of James also appeared more frequently, but now it didn't just stand still. Once, she saw it in the living room, its fingers gliding over the piano keys that James had never touched. The long, thin fingers moved slowly. It didn't make a sound, but Sarah could feel a mournful melody echoing in her head. It was no longer just a reflection, but a haunting presence. Sarah began to seek information about James's work. She contacted an old colleague of his, a man named David. David seemed surprised to hear James was on a business trip. "He's not on a business trip," David said bluntly. "James quit his job 3 months ago." Sarah's heart shattered. David's words were like a dagger stabbing into her trust. James had been lying to her for 3 months. He lied about his job, about his trips, about everything. The betrayal didn't just come from James. Sarah realized that one of her closest friends, Linda, was also hiding a secret. Linda was the one who always supported Sarah, who listened to her confessions. But when Sarah asked Linda about James, she noticed Linda was evasive. Once, she overheard Linda on the phone. "He's back," Linda said, her voice filled with worry. "I'll tell her not to ask any more questions. Things are getting complicated." Linda's voice dropped when she realized Sarah was standing there. Their relationship became strained. Linda started avoiding Sarah. No more calls, no more frequent coffee dates. Sarah felt trapped, isolated in a web of deceit. Sarah's panic reached its peak when she received an anonymous letter. The letter had only one line: "His ghost is a warning. Don't trust anyone. They are watching you." The letter had no sender's address, no postmark. Sarah felt like she was being drawn into a cat-and-mouse game, a game where she didn't know the rules, didn't know who was the enemy, who was the friend. She looked at James, who was calmly reading the newspaper. His smile was still warm, but for Sarah, it had become a mask. She no longer trusted that smile. A sense of helplessness and despair took over Sarah. She couldn't talk to anyone. She couldn't trust anyone. She searched for answers on her own. She began to follow James. She discovered he often went to a dilapidated, old house at the end of town. The house was uninhabited, yet the lights were often on. One night, after James went inside, Sarah decided to take a risk. She got out of her car, walking slowly towards the house. The front door was unlocked. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. Inside, the house smelled of mildew and dust. On the walls, old paintings were faded. Sarah went upstairs, and she heard voices. James's voice, but it wasn't his voice. It was cold, sharp, full of authority. You let her see you, the voice said. Next time, don't let that happen. Another voice answered. It was deeper, like an older man's. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to. She discovered me. Sarah held her breath. Who was talking to James? She crept closer to the door. A small crack. She peeked inside. She saw James standing there, but he wasn't wearing his familiar sweater. He was wearing a neat, black suit. Across from him was an older man with white hair, his eyes sharp and cold. She can't know the truth, the older man said. We worked too hard on this. Just one mistake, and everything will collapse. Sarah couldn't listen anymore. She felt dizzy, terrified. James wasn't James. The man she knew, the husband she loved, was gone. She stumbled, making a small sound. Both men turned, their eyes sharp. James looked straight at Sarah. That look was no longer the empty look of the ghost. It was James's look. But that look was filled with anger and coldness. He knew. Sarah had been caught. The door suddenly opened, and Sarah found herself being pulled into a vortex of secrets and conspiracies that she couldn't escape. Sarah was pulled into the dark room, which reeked of mildew and dust. What do you think you're doing, Sarah? James's voice rang out, no longer the warm voice she once loved. It was cold and foreign. The older man, whom Sarah later learned was named Victor, watched her with calculating eyes. Unfortunately, Sarah, you shouldn't have come here. Sarah struggled, but James's grip on her arm was too tight. She looked into his eyes, trying to find a bit of familiarity, a bit of love left. There was nothing, just emptiness. You're not James, Sarah stammered. Who are you? James laughed. A bitter laugh. I am James. Always have been. It's just that you never knew who the real James was. Then he told his story. His story was a horrifying tale of betrayal and conspiracy. James wasn't an architect, but a spy for a secret organization, one that specialized in gathering information and covering up mysterious cases. Their 10 years of marriage weren't a genuine love story, but a mission. Sarah was a target, a woman chosen to be the perfect cover for his secret life. The ghost Sarah saw wasn't James's phantom. It was him, the real James, who had been replaced by an imposter. The most horrifying twist was revealed. James had an identical twin brother, a man he had kept a complete secret. This brother, named Alex, had always been jealous of James. Alex didn't have the talent, career, and love that James had. He was recruited by the organization, and on a mission, he conspired to take over James's life. Alex impersonated me, James said, his voice full of contempt. He wanted my life. He wanted you. He wanted everything I had. But Sarah still didn't understand. So why did she see James's ghost? Why did he appear? That was me, James said. It was me, the one who was being held captive here. Alex replaced me. The organization no longer trusted me. They believed I had betrayed them. They believed I had leaked their secrets. Sarah felt her head spinning. For 10 years, she had lived with an imposter. The man she loved, the man she kissed, the man she shared her secrets with, was a fraud? What about Linda? Sarah asked, did Linda know? James nodded. She was one of the members of the organization. She was tasked with watching you, to make sure you didn't discover anything. Sarah felt betrayed, not just by James, but also by her closest friend. She looked at the man standing in front of her. This was the real James. His eyes still had the warmth she once knew, but now it was covered by a veneer of exhaustion and pain. She knew he had been living in his own prison for months. Where is he? Sarah asked. Alex, where is he? He's living my life, James said. He's at home. With you. A feeling of utter terror washed over Sarah. She thought of all the times Alex impersonated James, the strange behaviors, the clumsy lies. It all had a reason. He couldn't completely become James. And the ghost she saw, that was the real James who had tried to contact her, tried to warn her. What do we do now? Sarah asked. We have to expose him. We have to tell everyone the truth. But James shook his head. It's not that simple, Sarah. Alex isn't just an imposter. He's also part of this organization. If we expose him, we'll have to face the whole organization. They won't let us live. Sarah faced a difficult choice. She could run, live a life of fear. Or she could face it, fight for the truth. She looked at James, who had been imprisoned, who had been stripped of his life. She couldn't abandon him. She couldn't let that imposter live a happy life on someone else's pain. "I'll help you," Sarah said, her voice full of determination. "We'll do this together." James smiled. A weak smile, but full of hope. Two people, an ordinary woman and a betrayed spy, were about to face a secret organization and a dangerous imposter. The real war had just begun. Sarah and James came up with a plan. It was reckless and dangerous. They would have to exploit Alex's overconfidence, expose him in front of the organization and everyone else. They secretly gathered evidence, videos, calls, and emails that Alex had sent. Alex became more and more careless. He thought everything was under control. He had stolen someone else's life for so long that he began to believe it belonged to him. The fateful day arrived. Sarah invited all of James's friends and old colleagues to their house for a party to celebrate their 10th wedding anniversary. Alex, with a smug look, happily greeted everyone. Everything seemed normal. Until Sarah asked Alex to play a video she said were their memories together. Alex didn't suspect a thing. He turned on the video. The video started with old pictures of James and Sarah, but then it switched to a black and white film. In that film, Alex was talking to Victor, the older man. Their voices were clearly recorded. They talked about the plan to steal James's life. They talked about the deception, about replacing James. Alex tried to turn off the video, but Sarah had prepared. She had locked the computer. Everyone in the room was silent. They looked at Alex with suspicious eyes. Alex panicked. He screamed, "It's not me. This is fake. This is a conspiracy." But everyone had seen the truth. In that moment, Victor and other members of the secret organization appeared. They didn't come to help Alex. They came to clean up the mess he had created. Alex had failed. He had revealed the secret, ruining the entire mission. The final confrontation took place in the silence of the room. Alex looked at Sarah with eyes full of hatred. "You ruined everything," he growled. "You and him." But his words no longer had power. The police arrived. Both Alex and Victor were arrested. The story of a secret organization, a captive spy, and a deceived woman was finally brought to light. Sarah's and James's lives were changed forever. James was no longer a spy, he was free. But he couldn't go back to being a normal architect. The organization had been taken down, but its remnants still existed. Sarah had lost faith in the people around her, in what she had believed in. She had lived a lie for 10 years. Their relationship could never return to what it was. The wound of betrayal and lies was too deep. They had saved James's life, but they couldn't save their marriage. In their final days together, James and Sarah talked. They didn't talk about what had happened, but about what they had lost. About the Sunday mornings, the quiet evenings, the dreams they once had. Sarah realized that, even though she had lived with an imposter, her feelings were real. She had loved James, a James she had only imagined. And when she found the real James, he was no longer the man she had loved. His pain, his secrets, had turned him into a stranger. Their story didn't have a happy ending. They didn't live happily ever after. They parted ways. There was no hatred, only regret and sadness. James became a stranger, a ghost of the past. Sarah became a woman who had lost everything, but she had found the truth. She didn't run from the mystery, she faced it. And the truth, no matter how painful, had set her free. And that is our story for today, a story that proved that sometimes the most terrifying secrets aren't the things hiding in the dark, but the things we see every day in the lives of the people we love. If you felt this story resonated with you, please give us a like. If you want to explore more family secrets, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos from Family Secrets Unveiled. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next story.